are just learning, and some of us are more advanced. So that's just kind of, we got a nice mix of people here. So why don't I just grab an image here, because we want to talk about LUTs. So I'm just going to grab something, I don't know, let's just grab something like this photo here. And these are some of my aerial photos, by the way. So don't worry if I'm using aerial photos or whatever photos I'm using. These work on any photos. But the nice thing about a LUT, first of all, let me explain what a LUT is. A LUT stands for Lookup Table. And so it's kind of like a preset, but it's got some advantages and disadvantages to some of the other presets. The advantage of a LUT is it works on anything. It's cross-platform. It'll work on Mac or Windows. And basically what it is, it's an adjustment, how we're adjusting our photos. So you've got color and tonal adjustments. You can do it for creating corrections. You can also create them for special effects and visual effects and different styles and different things like that. What makes them really magical, though, is that a LUT will work on photos. It'll work on video. It'll work across different applications, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Photoshop, Final Cut. So that's a beautiful thing about LUTs. It's kind of like a universal preset that will work on just about anything. So the nice thing is you could start with a video, say in Premiere Pro, take a screen capture, bring the capture into Photoshop, make the adjustments, save that LUT, apply it, and then you're going to get exactly the same result on your photo. Is going to look exactly the same on your videos. Pretty amazing. So you can create them from different applications. Today we're going to be working in Photoshop, and we're going to create some LUTs in Photoshop. And we're also going to have a look at some LUTs. So maybe the first place to start, and a good place to start for you guys, is to just say, you know what is a LUT, and what LUTs do we have with Photoshop? So why don't we start by just grabbing this photo, and I'm just going to apply some LUTs. I just want to check my screen here just quickly to make sure that everything is looking good on the screen. I'm going to move myself over there. So I'm just going to be kind of out of your way. There we go. Yeah, and if I go there, I'm not blocking any panels, because that's always very important. All right, so here we go. What we're going to do is go to our adjustment layer, and we're going to click on the adjustment layers. Of course, the minute I do that, that happens. Let me pull the layers panel out. Okay, so I'm going to go quite slow at first, and then we'll just see where we go. So if we click on this little icon here, this is where we apply different adjustment layers. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with adjustment layers. They're the same as adjustments up here, except they apply as a new layer, which means they come with a layer mask, and they give us a lot more flexibility. But if you go down to near the bottom there, you're going to see something that's called Color Lookup. And Color Lookup, this is where we load our LUTs. So if we click on there, we're going to see in our Properties panel, Color Lookup, and here they are. So essentially you're going to be working with this first option most of the time here, where we're working with 3D LUT files. And we see where it says Load 3D LUT. When we click on there, the first thing that's going to appear is a full list of LUTs that come with Photoshop. So all of you have these LUTs. And why don't I just apply a couple of different ones to just kind of show you how they work. So why don't we start with something like a Moonlight. You've probably seen me use this before, and this is a good starting place if we're doing a day for night conversion. So let me move my Properties panel over to the other side, and then we're going to just focus here on our layers and our properties. So if you look here, what it does is it creates a color lookup. So it's just an adjustment layer like any other adjustment layer. It has a mask. And that means if I paint with black, when you see a white mask, that means that everything on that layer is showing. If I grab a brush and I decide to paint with a black brush, so there's our brush, foreground color set to black, make sure opacity is 100, and mode is normal, or it's not going to look the way you expect. And if I paint in here, look what's happening. In fact, let's make that a little bit bigger. For some reason, is my keyboard working? Yep, it is. Okay. That's interesting. My keyboard shortcut's not working there for the brush size. Don't worry about that. We'll get past it. But see what's happening. As I'm painting there with the black, notice what it's doing is it's hiding that LUT in the area we applied it. So one of the nice things about working with an adjustment layer is the fact it's non-destructive, which means that we can apply it exactly where we want. So say I decided to fill this with black, that would hide the whole contents of that LUT. And then if I paint with white, then essentially I could apply it wherever I wanted it. There we go, now my brush is working. So if I paint up here, notice we can apply it. Let's make a soft edge brush because it'll probably look better. And let's just undo that a couple of times, and let's paint. So if we start to paint there, we can start to paint in the LUT just where we want. So I'm just kind of showing you right now how to use a LUT. We're going to look at some different ones, but I just want to show you the features. So first of all, one of the nice things about the LUT is that we can quickly apply it in one click, and it works as an adjustment layer and makes it very, very easy to work with our photos or our videos or whatever. Now, the disadvantage is if I click this LUT, we can't go in and adjust it. In fact, let me just reset this layer mask for a sec here so it just applies to the whole thing. So you don't have control over the individual settings inside a LUT. But what you can do is you can play with the opacity. So we can just, that's basically the strength of that LUT, how much of it do you want to apply. So you don't have to go full force, you can apply it just a little bit like this. The other thing is we can do different things with blending modes. So if we go down and maybe just do color, now it's just affecting the color. So if you can see, this is the color of the LUT. But I mentioned the LUT has two components, color and tone. So if you just want to see the tonal adjustment without the color, choose luminosity. And now we see all it's doing is changing the brightness. And then if we go to normal mode, what it's doing is it's now using the color and the brightness together. So that's a kind of little bit of control you have over the LUT. And let's just quickly, while we're here, I'm just going to turn that off. Let's have a look at a couple more. In fact, if we've got this one here, we can try some different ones in here. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, so I'm just applying some different LUTs. So this is a Fuji kind of look. And notice what I did is I can change the existing LUT. I don't have to create a new one to change it. That's another thing that's nice about the adjustment layer. So if I click on the LUT icon, I can go into here and I can load in different ones. Let's do the bleach bypass. And notice that it'll just replace that. So, you know, that's one that I might want to play around with the opacity. This is a popular look in film. You'll probably see that used a lot in video. But here's the other nice thing about using the LUTs. We can stack LUTs. So say we've got that one, a bleach bypass, and then I want to create a new one. I'll just go under here, and I'm just going to go down to color lookup. And now I can create another LUT. Well, not create one yet. We're just going to use one. We'll create one soon. Let's try a Kodak film stock here. So there we go. So see, that kind of emulates a film stock. Okay, so if we want to use the two together, I can go there and say, you know what? I just want to use the color of the bleach bypass, but not the tonal adjustments. And I'm going to drop down the opacity of it and just apply it a little bit. So now I'm starting to blend a couple of different LUTs together. See what we're doing here? And that's kind of nice. So it has that advantage working with the LUTs. Looks like we might have a couple of questions here. What have we got here? She's missing an abstracting device link profiles when loading 2020 when getting her new computer. I don't know if you're using these at all. You know, for this kind of work, to be honest, I'm not really using these. I'm just using the 3D LUTs. So you can do that. Can you mix LUTs? Yes, you can. And in fact, that's what we just did there. The way to mix a LUT is to apply two LUTs and then just start to play around with the opacity. So just kind of consider that volume slider where we're actually just blending a couple of them together there. So we'd be good for that. All right. So now that we kind of know a little bit about LUTs, how do we make our own LUT? Let me just delete both of these. We're just going to reset everything. And why don't I just bring my layers panel back in here just to try and keep things a little bit tidy. And I'll put my properties panel just up here. All right. So creating LUTs is actually quite easy. Actually, let me pull the layers panel back out. I just decided it'll be easier to work this way. So the way we create a LUT inside of Photoshop is essentially we just apply adjustment layers. And so we can take those different adjustment layers together and save those as a preset without all the layers. What it does is it just gives us that LUT that we just apply with one click. So let's have a look. Maybe we're going to do some adjustments to this photograph right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a curves adjustment, which is always a fun place to start. And what I'm going to do here with the curves is we'll do some color adjustments. So why don't we go in here, we're going to choose red. So now we're in the red channel. And I'm going to boost the reds a little bit in the highlights. And I'm going to pull them down in the shadows. Or the mid-tone shadows. And notice why it's making an interesting look on the sky there. And this is always nice, you know, when you do this. See how it gives that red kind of glow to the clouds? Because those brighter areas are going to pick up on those reds. It's going to look kind of interesting. Cool. All right, so why don't we go to the blue channel now? And what I want to do is I want to boost the blues in the shadows. And I want to reduce them in the highlights. So see how it's starting to take on a different look already? And all I've done is made these two changes so far. Now we can build these up. And we can make these more comprehensive. So why don't we just do that? We're just going to go in here. I'm just going to get out of my properties panel for a second. And why don't we apply a different adjustment? Why don't we go into here and we'll do, just really to show you that we can do this, why don't we do something like let's do a gradient map. Okay, so I'm going to choose this gradient map. I want to reverse it. So what it's doing is it's just mapping. I've got other tutorials on the gradient map. I'll explain that. I explain that on there. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to use it for tone. And we can see what that's doing. You know, before and after. It's just giving it more contrast. It's just kind of like one way. And let's apply another. I just really want to just kind of show you guys how this works. A photo filter. So we could use a warming filter, or we could use a color. Why don't we use something like a violet? I don't know, just for fun. And let's see how that looks. Okay, that's interesting. Now, if we want to mix these, of course, we can go in and do some different things with the adjustment layers. Also, another thing that's interesting is if you change the order, watch what happens. Nothing. Okay, great. All right, forget that. So what we're gonna, sometimes it will make a difference when you change the layer order of the adjustments, but in this case, it's not. Okay, so why don't we just take this down a little bit? And we're just kind of blending it in. So what we're doing is essentially just looking at this photo till we get a look. So let's turn it off. So there we are before, and there we are after. I kind of like that. It's kind of fun. What do you guys think? And let me know if you guys, what do you think we should call this LUT? Let me know in the comments there. And hi, everybody. All right, so it looks like we've got some people answering questions in there. Thanks for that, David. And if you guys do see questions in there and you know the answers, go ahead and answer them. Because there's certainly plenty of people here that know a lot. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to create the LUT. So I'm going to select all of these adjustment layers. And of course, I don't really know that if I need to. But sometimes I do. And then what I'm going to do is I want to go into here, and I am going to export, file, export, color lookup tables. So I'll just leave that for a sec so you guys can see that. And if you're taking notes or anything like that, file, export, color lookup tables. And what that's going to do is it's going to export all of these layers, well, these adjustment layers, into a preset which is called a LUT. So let's do that right now. I'm just going to click. And now we have some options here. You'll see we've got 3DLs, cubes, ICC profiles. We've got different formats here. And to be honest, I don't really bother with them. Just the 3DL or the cubes are going to work quite well. And we're just going to save this. So I've called that boat. I want to call it, what should we call this? Is any suggestions there that I like? The Cafe LUT. Okay, I like that. Oh, that was Sunset Pop. I kind of like that better. Sorry, Andrew. Let's do that. Sunset Pop. And what I'll do for you guys, by the way, if you want this, I will put a link on the replay on the video here on YouTube here. I'll put a link so you guys can download this LUT if you guys want it. And let's just click OK. Now we're going to get to save the LUT. So I'm going to put it into a folder here. Why don't I put it on my desktop? And once again, we'll call it Sunset Pop. All right. And we're just going to hit save. Boom. It's done. Okay. so if I want to use it, let me just delete there. What I do now, this is how we use a LUT that we've created. So we're going to click here on our adjustment and we're going to choose color lookup. Now we're going to click just like we did before. But this time, rather than selecting a LUT from this list, I'm going to click again on Load 3D LUT. And now it's going to bring up the Finder on Mac or your Explorer on Windows. Then we're going to hit Desktop. And there they are. There's the cube and there's the 3DL. So why don't we just grab, doesn't really matter. Let's just grab this one. And boom, look at that. Now we've got that look is applied in one go. Now, if you were working on video, if you were in Premiere Pro or whatever, you could bring this in and it will work exactly the same way. So if you've created a LUT from Premiere Pro, you can bring it into Photoshop and use it like that. In fact, let's do it on a different photograph just so we can kind of see it working. So I'm just going to go here and open a new photo. So we're going to choose our desktop and our Live from Lockdown. Why don't we grab this photo here? Well, I want to do this one. And this is just kind of a fun photo that I shot in Times Square, New York, using a Lens Baby tilt shift lens. I'll just give you guys a quick look at that. Just kind of fun. All right, so let's apply that. So we're going to go here and we're going to choose color lookup. Once again, we're going to click on there and we are going to load it into our LUT thing. And boom, there we go. See that? We're able to apply it to different photos. And of course, you know, we can turn it on or off. And once again, we can separate the color or the tone. If we just want to grab the color, we go here. Notice it's only changing the color, not the tone now. And if we just want to use the tone, we can go into the luminosity and that'll change the tone. All right, so one of the things I'm going to show you, a little trick that I came up with, kind of based on this, because you can't adjust a LUT really, but you sort of can. And it's based on what I've already shown you is sometimes I'll separate the color and the luminosity into two separate layers, and then that way I can adjust them individually. Let me show you what I mean. So let me just go back to the regular. So what we've done right now is we've just applied this LUT. I'm going to duplicate the LUT. So now we've got two copies of it. Obviously it's a little too much, but watch this. If I hide the top one, I go to the bottom one, and I change this to color blend mode. Now we're applying the color. And now if we go to the top one, you know where I'm going with this, and I apply luminosity, now I'm applying the equivalent of the LUT. See that? This is the same as that LUT. But now because we've got the luminosity and the color separately, I can now adjust the brightness of that LUT independently than the color of this LUT. So this is a nice way to kind of dial in as you want. And of course, if you want to double it up, let's see what happens if I go there and I duplicate the color. Control J. Yeah. So now I've gone above 100%. Now I've got 200% color adjustment. So how did I do that? Let me go back and show you again how I did that. Let me get rid of it. So remember, we've got the top layer here, which is luminosity. And I could just change this to brightness. We've got the bottom one, which is color. So these two combine. So if we take this one color in color blend mode and we take the same one in luminosity mode, we're getting the equivalent of that LUT, but now we've split it into color and tone. And this is everything at full strength. If I want to increase the color more than what's here, all I do is duplicate that color adjustment layer, and now we're stacking the color and it's increasing it. We could even go more if we wanted. So each time we do that, we're even increasing the intensity. So that's how you can kind of turn up one of the parameters beyond, you know, what you just get on the LUT. So by playing around with that, you can split that LUT, you can tweak it, you can adjust it, and you can you know, double up on the color, or you can also double up on the tone. If we want to double up on the tone here, you get more contrast, or let me do it several times. Look at that. You can go really hardcore on the contrast, and then just put these, select them all. These are the contrast ones here. Actually select them all, and then just Control G will put them into a group, and now we can adjust the opacity of it. Look at this. But now we've got way control. See what I did there? And I can do the same thing on the color. Control J a bunch of times. Go down here, select them all, Control G, put them in a group, and now we got color and tone. Hopefully I'm not losing you guys here. And if I take these and I take these all the way down to 0, there's no adjustment. But now when we do go to adjust it, now it's on steroids. We can go crazy with this. See that? And you could do that with any LUT, by the way, not just this one I created here. So I don't know, how'd you guys find that? Is that very useful? Okay, how do we get the custom LUT into the list? That's a good question. And I would say that you would put them in a folder, in the presets folder inside of Photoshop where your presets are, and they should appear in there. But however, I have not had that work. I haven't had any luck with it. So if anybody has had any luck with the LUTs, let me go in here. Let's go here. If you guys have had any luck being able to load these into the files, so they show up in here, go ahead and drop that into the comments, because personally I've had to load them in every time. I haven't discovered how to do that yet, if it is possible. So let's see what you guys have got here for the comments. Love the workaround. Thanks. Thank you, Lee and Louise. The word, yes, Ashton, the word tone means the same as luminosity. There's words used, some people call them tone, some call them luminance, luminosity. So essentially, one of them kind of comes from an older term. So basically, tone is your grayscale tone. You know, your blacks to whites, right? So you've got shadows, lights. We call it luminosity because, well, we're working on a screen, so luminance is brightness. So as you increase that brightness of the screen, or, you know, your luminosity there, it just gets brighter. So they mean the same thing. So you might hear people say grayscale information, you might hear tone, you might hear luminosity, luminance. Luma is used quite a lot in video, but essentially it just means brightness, which is a little bit different than gamma. If you hear gamma, that works a little differently than just brightness. If I can get geeky for a second, brightness is a linear, which means, you know, imagine there's a graph, it goes like that, whereas the other one goes on it's not a linear scale. So if you're working on gamma, it's not just like that, so you have to make other adjustments to make it work. And that's kind of, your screen is actually based on gamma, but then it's adjusted through you know, through the software, so you just see a straight luminance line. I don't know, sorry, I didn't probably explain that in the most plain English possible, or maybe I just went too far with that. But the answer is yeah. Hey, Viva Vivi, it's all good to be back. This is a great tutorial, thank you. All right, so why don't we move into something else? So if you have just joined us, we are on Live from Lockdown, and we're doing tutorials. We've been playing around with LUTs. And please remind me, guys, Bruce, please remind me to give you guys that LUT. So that LUT that I just created, if you want it, I'm more than happy to share that with you. And I'll put the download link on there afterwards, so that'll be on the replay. So just before we move into our next tutorial, I want to ask you guys just two quick favors. One, if you're liking this, hit the like button right now. It helps the algorithm. Just go out there. And also, if you have not yet subscribed to photoshopCAFE, go ahead and, if you don't mind, hitting that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. And then you'll know when we do these live streams. When we do the live streams, a little red light will appear on there, and also you'll get a notification if you turn them on. So YouTube will send you a quick email and say, hey, right now we're live. Because I know some of us here are from the mailing list on PhotoshopCAFE, and some of us are subscribers to the PhotoshopCAFE YouTube channel. Now, all of this is one family that we call the Cafe Crew. And so every Tuesday I do a new tutorial, which I post on YouTube. And then I'll take that and I'll do a written component of it, put it on photoshopcafe.com with the video. So you get the video and the written component on photoshopcafe.com, and then on YouTube the video is live. So every Tuesday I do that. Every Thursday right now we do the live stream at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And then on the weekends, I've been just experimenting with our Back to Basics. So we've been calling it our Beginners Series. But I did a poll, and hundreds of you said Back to Basics is better because It wasn't just beginners going there. It was more experienced people who'd skipped over the basics, forgotten them, or had never really learned some of the basics. So each weekend I'm doing one of those tutorials right now. I have been uploading them on Saturdays. I tried Sunday morning this week, and that worked quite well. So I'm just feeling it out right now. So every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday or Sunday, I'm not sure yet on the weekend, we're going to be doing new tutorials. All right, so why don't we look at something else right now? We're going to be looking at black and white. So we just looked at these color lookup tables, or the LUTs. And if you missed this so far, don't worry. Just check out the replay, which will be up in a little bit. And then once you guys watch that replay, you can catch up. So we're going to start fresh right now with a brand new tutorial. And then what we're going to do is we'll probably come in here and we're going to apply a LUT to the black and white, because that's something I don't see people doing too often. I see them applying LUT to color, but you can also enhance a black and white photo. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk quickly about the different ways of doing a black and white conversion, starting with the worst way all the way up to the two best ways. So the worst way that people can do it is probably the way that most people do it, Command-Shift-U. And let's get that going there. Make sure we're on the layer, Command-Shift-U. And that's it, right? So what you essentially did is you chose desaturate. Let me show you where that is. Image, adjustments, and you go down the bottom here. It's desaturate. Command-Shift-U or Control-Shift-U on Windows. And that'll get us a very, very quick black and white conversion. But the thing is, that's it. We've just basically zapped out all the tone. And if we look in the color channels here, you'll see all the three color channels are identical. See that? So you've just basically triplicated the black and white information. So I don't suggest that as the best way of doing it. There's another way that people do it, which I think is worse, and that is to go to image mode and choose grayscale. Discard. This will get you a black and white image, but notice what it's done is thrown away two of the color channels, and now you only have one, which is fine if you're going to be saving this out as a monochromatic image, as a bitmap or something that only supports that, then that's fine. You're going to kind of have to do that. But I would say I would use these other color conversion ways I'm going to show you first, and then go to that. So let's look at the other ways we can do this. So if we go under the adjustment layer, one of the ways we can go here is the black and white. And a black and white filter works really nicely, because what it's doing is it's keeping all the information in the color channels. It's not flattening them down. But what we can essentially do is adjust under the tone. So we know this bus is red, and in fact, let me hide it so I can show you quickly. We can see we've got reds, we've got yellows. So why don't we just look at those for now. So the nice thing about doing this is we can adjust the tone. Maybe you're doing a black and white newsletter, or you just want to do a black and white conversion and have it clean. So we can go here. Watch what happens if I hit those reds. I can take very dark, or I can take them very light. So as I'm adjusting the tones under the reds, it's brightening and darkening the reds. Now if we look at the yellow cabs, these are yellow cabs here. We can lighten those, we can darken them. So see how that's working. So by going in here, we can make the adjustments, and we can start to tune up the adjustment and get it how we want it to look. Now of course it's going to look kind of interesting. Let me use a different image here. Let me use this image. And the reason I'm doing that is because I just realized the other one is tilt shift. So we got all kinds of interesting things going on there, but it does show the colors very well. So we got this bokeh here where it's a little muddied. So let's go something that's not quite so much and do it here. So we go back to our black and white, and we can just make these adjustments. This is going to work particularly in the blues here. See the sky? And then we go in here. We're seeing the cyans. Now we can adjust the water. And see how you can just go in here by doing it this way. You can make the subject pop by making that adjustment rather than just doing a flat black and white. This is what you get. This way we get a lot of control over how we mix those different tones in there, even though we're not showing the color tones, but where those colors are in the image, we can brighten or darken the image. Now if you don't know what the colors are, grab this little finger, and we can just drag left and right, and see how that's picking up the colors. And see what we're doing here. Now it's moving the cyans. If we go up into here, we'll go there. Or, and sometimes you'll get colors where more than one slider will move at once because you're selecting multiple tones. But look how we can change the appearance of that sky just by changing that. So that's definitely a great tool for making black and white adjustments. Now there's another one. And let's go in here. And that's the channel mixer. So I'm going to turn on channel mixer. Now what the channel mixer does, rather than working on the individual colors, which is what we were doing on the previous, the black and white filter works on the colors, RGB, CMY. And that's red, green, and blue, which are RGB colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, which are your three colors inside of process, CMYK. K stands for black, which is not technically a color, but a tone. So those are the 6 colors you'll see persistently throughout Photoshop. And in fact, if you look at a color wheel, when you look at RGB and CMYK, a CMYK color is actually going to be the opposite to an RGB color on the color wheel for people that are super technical in color. If you're not into that, don't worry. All right, so let's go in here. We're in the channel mixer here. And with the channel mixer, what we're going to do is we're going to turn on monochrome. And this is going to give us a black and white adjustment. Pretty decent one to start with, I would say. And remember, the nice thing about this, keeping it in the 3 channels, is you've got a lot more depth there to your colors. And what we can do now is, rather than working on just, it doesn't pick the reds in the photo, the greens and the blue in the photo per se. What it does is it picks the actual color channel. And let me show you here. So if we go under here, and this is our channel, and you'll find that under Windows Channels. Usually it's nested with the layers and the paths. And so if we're looking at this photograph here, and why don't we just go down to the RGB, and I'm just going to show you quickly. So there's the blue channel. That's the information in the blue channel. This is the green channel. And this is the red channel. In fact, if I click them on here, you can see how they look different. See that? And that's how a camera works, is essentially a camera collects the data from the red, green, and blue, and then merges those together to get the colors we're looking for. Now, usually it's captured in color, and they just use if you look at a sensor, you'll see they actually have tinted stuff over the top of these. And the reason these are showing in black and white and not color is because it's easier to work with. And if you actually want to know your preferences inside of Photoshop, you can change it to color. I don't know if it's something you guys want to see. Now let's have a look. Why not? So if we go under here, I believe it's one of these things here, under Interface, this is our preference, and we choose Channels in Color. Now we see these are the channels in color. This is what they actually look like. The red, green, and blue channels. Put them together, we get a color image. Let me just turn that off, otherwise it's going to keep looking weird for me when I'm doing other things. So this is actually how they look, and now they're presented in black and white because it makes it easier to work with. So when we're lightening and darkening different areas, we can do that. Alright, so let's turn the channel mixer on. What the channel mixer does is enables us to dial in how much of the red channel, how much of that green channel, and how much of that blue channel do we want to see. And right now we've got 40, 40, 20, which is presenting us with an image. And of course those 3 equal 100%. Generally speaking, you want to keep that around 100%, otherwise you're going brighter than the original image or darker than the original image. Now of course we can change it. So let's go here if we want to make those blues a little darker. And oops, sorry, forgot to turn on monochrome. Let's turn that monochrome on, there we go. Let's make those blues a little darker. Now we're only 73% total, see that? So we need to brighten it up. So why don't we add some red, see how that looks? It's kind of nice, or we could try greens. And see what we can do now by using the channel mixer and changing these different channels. We can determine how Photoshop makes that black and white conversion, and it just gives us a whole lot of power. And Louise, yes, this will work on a JPEG. It'll work on any image type. So these are there for that. It works on TIFFs, it works on different things. David, is there a way we can use a Photoshop filter, some other method to accurately identify colors in a grayscale image in order to colorize it? Well, if you want to identify the colors, you can actually control click in the channels. So say I want to select, which is, once again, this is another form of luminosity masking. So if I want to identify the tones, say in the blue, if I click here, this is going to give me all the bright tones in the blue channel. And in fact, if I just fill this with white, that's actually, let me hide everything else so you can see that. I'll just create black under there so you guys can see what I'm actually doing. So if you want to identify the tones, these are the luminosity values or the brightness values inside of that channel. Now I've just put it over the top of the other one. See that? So you can kind of do it like that, but also just going in here and just viewing them, you can also see those different channels, the lights and the darks. And I did a basic tutorial on luminosity masking. I've got another one coming up soon, which will break into this a little bit deeper. So anyway, guys, that's just some basics there with converting to black and white. So far we've looked at LUTs and we've looked at black and white. Now I think it's time to go into fix my photo. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at some of your photographs and make some adjustments. Now, if you want us to consider your photos in the future, submit your photo to Fix My Photo, and we have a link there where you can upload it to Dropbox. Bruce is going to drop that link into the chat right now. Copy that. It's also on the page on photoshopCAFE where I have all the archives. It's also listed on there, and it's also on YouTube. So you'll see that link. And upload your images, and we want to work with raw files if we can. If not, give us the JPEGs. The JPEGs are not going to look as good, but this is how we're going to basically do that. So under Fix My Photo, this is submissions we have from this week. So we have some nice submissions here, and we've got some previous ones that we've done, but why don't we start this week with, let's start here with this one here by Gigi, sounds like Gigi, and we are going to open this one up here, and I'm going to double click, and it's going to open because it's a raw file. So we've got this shot of a hippo. All right, now if you want your photos considered for this, submit your photos once again into that link, and each week we're going to go in and have a look at some. Okay, so I'm looking at this. We've got a great photo here of a hippo. It looks like it's really lacking some color. It feels like the contrast is a little bit too high here, probably because of shooting into direct sun. It's not the best time of the day to be shooting, but of course, you know, when you're out shooting hippos, you've got to shoot when the hippos are there. All right, so what we're going to do is, first of all, we've got some distractions in the foreground. Rather than try and clean those out, it's not really adding anything, and there's nothing really to this part of the photo that's enhancing our story. So I'm just going to crop it. So we're going to grab the crop tool, and I'm just going to lock in the aspect ratio, and then I'm just going to start in the corner and just drag until we've got that out. Great. In fact, I might even come in a little tighter because the hero of this story is the hippo. Now we can move this up or down if we want to position it differently in a frame. You know, if you feel like the foreground area is part of your story, you can do that. Or if you want to just kind of do the rule of thirds where you're kind of showing the bank there, it's kind of, you know, up to interpretation. I might bring it to about there because I just kind of like that, where it's going a little out of focus in the background and it's just adding a little bit to the story. Okay, so I'm going to apply that crop, and all I need to do is just click on another tool, and that will apply it. So the first thing we've done is now we've brought our focus into the area which is the hippo. We've got rid of some of the distractions. So sometimes you'll crop for setting up for aspect ratio for printing, or you're going to crop for a particular use, and in other times you're going to crop just to emphasize the subject. You could even crop in tighter if you wanted to just kind of show the head here. But let's go with this, and we like this. Okay, so one of the things I just feel like right now, the next problem, so what you're essentially going to be doing is you're going to be looking at the biggest problems and solving them first. The next one, I feel like there's too much contrast in here. So we could take a contrast down just a little bit. But the other thing is we've got these blown out highlights, so I'm going to recover our highlights probably all the way. There we go. Now we're starting to see some tone there. So that's very important when we're looking at a photograph. Notice when it's here, we're blowing it out. We're losing the detail. If you were looking for some kind of a strong rim light effect, that would be good, but it's not really, I think, what we're looking for here. We want to see a little bit more of the texture. See how the texture is now showing? So when I say it blows out, you lose that texture detail. And the roughness of the skin of this hippo is a lot of the story. So I want that texture. So I'm also going to go under the shadows, and we're going to open up our shadows. And see, by doing this, already we've reduced the contrast. Backslash key, before and after. And so we can see now we're getting a lot more contrast in here. Another thing I feel like we want to do is the color. Let's punch up the vibrance a little bit. Put a little more color into here. There we go. But notice I can't get where I want just using vibrance. So I'm going to give it a little bit. The other thing that I think can make a big difference is our color temperature. Because if we look at this skin there, it's a little bit blue. And, you know, we've got direct sunlight and it's a little cool. So why don't we warm it up a little bit? So we're going to go in here and warm it up. Boom. Or we could go into the settings here. We could try a daylight setting. Cloudy. Cloudy actually looks quite good, even though it's not. But sometimes, you know, shade. Shade is really kicking in there. That's looking nice. So these are the settings. If you've got a raw file, all these settings here that were on the camera are going to be available. That's one of the advantages in working with RAW. So we could go in here and we could increase this a little bit. It's looking nice. Now let's have a look at the profiles. So if you see these little 4 buttons here, we can click in here. I'm going to move my photo out of the way, my video here, so we don't distract from that. Okay, so we've got different color profiles here. And so we could try some of these. That portrait one's looking nice. The landscape one's looking good. So these are the ones that come from the Adobe colors. And here are the camera ones here. Well, actually, those are my favorites. I'm sorry. Here's the Adobe ones here. So these are the different Adobe color preset profiles. And these ones here are the ones from the camera. The standard's actually looking pretty good too. So we can see we've got some nice color profiles that we can apply there. That looks good. Let's just go back. And so let's have a look and see where we're at. There we are before, and there we are after. So we're definitely brought out the detail and the color that we want. The last thing we want to do is maybe add a little bit of the contrast back in. But rather than moving that contrast slider to do it, because what that contrast slider will do is will increase the whites and the blacks together. I don't really want to add any more whites, but I would like to deepen the blacks a little bit. So rather than moving the contrast slider up, let's just go down to the black slider and pull this down and see how it's just going to put a little bit of body back into that image. And maybe just to touch it up, I might give the texture a little bit because I like the surface texture. So let's increase that and see how we can make that pop. Now, if you don't want to apply it everywhere, go and grab a brush up here. If you're on an earlier version, it'll be up here in Camera Raw. This is the newest version. So we're going to grab the brush and we're going to turn on mask option so we can see where we're masking. And I'm just going to paint across the body of this hippopotamus. All right. What we're doing here is just selecting that area, and let's turn off the options. Now we've applied our mask. You can't see any difference, but we've applied it, and now I could go down here and give this texture a punch on our hippo without increasing the texture on the background, because I don't want to increase the texture on the background because the background's kind of busy already. And so we could really go quite high with that, and if we wanted, maybe give it an exposure. Let's see how it looks. If it doesn't look good, we just back it off. It's not bad. And I'll recover those highlights a little bit more. So now we're getting a double highlight recovery because we're doing it in the brush. And that will allow us to open up the exposure just a little bit. And there we go. So if we look at this, there's our before and there's our after. I kind of like that. Now, one of the things I do see a lot of people do is clarity. And you'll notice I probably don't use clarity very often. And I just feel it's just so played out lately. I'll show you what happens. Clarity, people love it because what it does, see how it just adds so much punch to this image? And if that's what you're looking for, you kind of go ahead and use the clarity. For me, I just don't use it as much because I just feel like it just gives it a look which just starts to look, just very, it's played out. Like so many people are doing it. And once again, though, if you like it, go ahead and use the clarity. But you'll find it's something I don't use much. Particularly since the texture slider came along. The texture slider, I just like it better because I can make the surface details pop without creating that kind of grungy look, which was really cool back in the days, when that kind of grungy HDR was very popular, and I was one of the pioneers of it, so I'm not going to trash it. But back in the day when we first did that, it was this look that people loved, and it was like, wow, what an awesome look. It looks like illustrative, it looks like a sketch, and it was kind of fun. But I just feel like maybe that style is getting a little dated. Now, having said that, HDR itself is wonderful. It's a great way to increase the dynamic range of a photo. I just feel like maybe the adjustments are just going to be a little bit more subtle than maybe we did a few years ago. But once again, I'm not going to judge. If you like that and you like the illustrative look, you like the grungy look, go for it. Go ahead, full steam ahead. It's really what you like and what you want in your work. I have clients that make me do that, and they like that, and I do it for them. So, that's what it is. So anyway, that's that image that we've done. Let's see what else we've got here. Let's go in here. Any questions on that? Let's see what we've got here. I don't see any questions. Oh, here we go. Does texture and clarity make noise worse? I think there could be a problem. Can you clean up the hippo's eye? Oh, sorry guys, I just jumped ahead. Well, let's bring it back up again. So fortunately, it's remembering the adjustments. And yeah, let's have a look here. If we go into, let's go to 100%. And let's have a look at that. It doesn't make noise worse. In a way, it can, yeah. Let's go here. But we've got some really good noise reduction tools here. And here we are under detail. And I could just go here and just easily clean up that noise. So you put some noise reduction. If you want the options, go into this little arrow here. We could go under there and maybe add some contrast. So we could kind of play around and fine tune that and make up for it with sharpening. And honestly, if I was going to do some cleaning up of the eye, I would probably just take it into Photoshop and do it. So I would just choose Open inside of Photoshop. And then, go ahead and make any adjustments there. Let's zoom into 100%. So, I don't really have a lot of experience with a hippo, so I'm not really sure what we would want to do. I mean, I wouldn't want to just retouch the eye without retouching the entire photo. Otherwise, it would look weird. I mean, we could get rid of the yellow in the eye, but I don't know. Maybe that's a hippo thing. Maybe we'll save the retouching for people, because honestly, I'm probably going to mess it up because I don't have experience with hippos or what they're supposed to look like. But let me show you what you could do. The way I would do that if I was working with a person is I would grab the brush, and then why don't we just duplicate that layer, because I always like to work on a duplicated layer. And essentially what I would do is I would just reduce the amount of saturation on there. So I would just essentially just do that. So I would go in here and I guess I could do the saturation. Let's do this. Grab the sponge tool, desaturate. Let's take our flow down a little bit. And we could go in there and just start to desaturate some of the thing. You'd never want to whiten an eye. You never want to increase the luminosity in there. Because if you do that, then it's going to look really bad. It'll be ghoulish. You don't want eyes glowing there. Bruce, you're so bad. All right. So anyway, so if we look at it like that, we can see, before and after. I mean, we could go in and sharpen the eye. Let's do a little bit in here. This is kind of like some of the things we could do in here, so we can see there's before and after. Why don't we go in here? We're going to use our dodge tool, so we can just kind of lighten it up a little bit. Try and bring out a little bit more of that color. There's definitely some noise in there. Probably gone a little too far there. Let me take that down a little bit. And let's grab the burn tool. Make it really small. And I'm just going to kind of work that around the edges. Okay, so if I was to zoom out a little bit, and let's have a look at that. So if we go before and after, you can see, okay, we've done something there to that hippo's eye. So yeah, we could do that. Not being an expert on hippos, though, I don't know if that was better or worse. There's probably some people that are really into this are cringing, saying, oh my god, hippos have really dark eyes, you shouldn't do that. Or maybe I just did what's supposed to be done. I don't know enough about the subject. So maybe that brings me to another thing, is if you are doing any kind of retouching and stuff like that, don't just dive in and do what you think looks good. Do a little bit of research on the subject, and that probably wouldn't hurt either. Alright, so we've got Guy Peterson here. He's got this awesome rock and roll picture, and of course he's got to know I Love Rock and Roll, not the song Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, but that's a good song too. But yeah, so this is cool. This is a good shot. I love this shot. Great angle. Obviously, this guy knows what he's doing. You've got the context here. You've got the light. You got the pose. You got everything going on there really nicely. So this really doesn't need much, I don't think. So a photo like this, maybe let's have a look and play with it just a little bit. I might give it just a little bit more exposure. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can go. One of the things I've noticed, because I do a little bit of rock and roll stuff here, is lights. Lights go really interesting. Watch what happens to these lights. As we adjust it, we can either get more of this contrast in the background, or the lights can tend to kind of spread. The other thing that happens, if you don't watch them, you're going to get this posterization very, very quickly with lights, with the stage lights. So that's why, when you're working at things like highlights and shadows, see how it can affect it. If you go too far, it can really make a big difference. So we might go a little bit and let these lights just kind of flare out a little bit, let them bloom, because that's kind of like a nice look. Maybe open up the shadows, because as I open up the shadows, see how that's creating more light everywhere? So it depends on the look. If you're trying to cut these lights or isolate them, you might go into here and you'll recover the highlights. You'll start to do a little bit of clarity and stuff like that to separate those lights. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to let them spread so we get more of a lit scene with that light spreading everywhere. And we can just go in here. But notice how you just got to be careful. And one of the things I might do is I might actually go in there and adjust those tones a little bit. Let's try this. There we go. Skin tones are looking good. I'm not even going to prop the vibrance or the saturation or really do much else with it. So let's have a look here and see how that's looking. Okay, my forward, before and after. There we go. There's before and there's the after. Okay, so it looks like what happened here is I already made the adjustments. That's why it was looking good. Let me reset this. Let's go up under here, and I've got to remember how to reset this. It's changed. So we click down here, and usually option reset. There we go. I got it. Sorry about that, guys. Let's do a do-over. Okay, so what I would do here is let's get that exposure up how we want it. There we go. And let's go back in here. Just give that a little touch. Open up these shadows because I want those lights to just kind of bloom, because it's just creating. And once again, this depends on the look you're going for. I'll give you a couple of different looks on this one. And if you wanted to separate the lights, you would go in here with the blacks, or you could go here to just spread them even more. And then you might go in and let's grab our brush. Maybe we want to select our guitar player here. We're going to hit the mask option. Right now, by default, it's red. We're going to change the color of it to white so we can see what we're doing. And we just want to just kind of select him. Now, notice it's doing a pretty good job of selecting him like that, and that's because our auto mask is turned on. Okay, we got that set there. Good. Let's hide the mask options. And now we could maybe go in here and add a little bit of texture, or a little bit of, there's some texture there, see that? Maybe a little clarity. I know I said I don't use clarity much, but I do use it quite a bit when it comes to music stuff. And we could just kind of play around with that a little bit. Alright, just try to get the skin tones looking good. So now if we want to look at this before and after. So I'm not really doing much, but what I'm doing is I'm focusing on bringing out these lights. I'm focusing on bringing out the color here because that's kind of the look I'm going for. I'm not going to touch the saturation because stage lights, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to work well. Let me show you. Yeah, see how it just... Well, let me get back to my regular settings. Hang on. Let me go to the overall adjustments. And look, watch what happens here. See, it just... The lights will clip if you turn up the saturation. It'll lose punch if you go there. Same thing with vibrance. You know, you might increase the vibrance a little bit, but you don't want to do too much of that. Now, let me go for a different look, though. So that's one of the looks I'd be going for. And in fact, if I want to save this, let me go here. And I'm just going to create a preset just quickly. And we'll call this Rock 1. So this is one look we're going for. Now I want to reset this again. And another look I might go for, but not necessarily, you know, when it's backlit like this is kind of a little bit hard. But let's try this. So we could try a different look is if we really want to go for the high contrast kind of a look, which some people really like. We can do that with the contrast, the texture like this. We can push this up a little bit. So this is a completely different way of doing this. Let's recover our highlights. Let's open up our shadows a little bit. Push our whites up. Get our blacks to give it a little bit more grit there. Let's play around for exposure. See what we got for color temperature. Okay, so then we've got this one here. So if we look at this before and after, what we're doing is we're just kind of bringing out detail. So this is a completely different look, and let me compare these. So if we go here, we're going to call it Music 2 or Rock 2. Let's do Rock 2. Okay, so let's have a look now. So we've got the different looks that we did. So if we look at Rock 1, we've got that kind of a look, which is more, you know, it's light, it's lit, you know, we're showing the lights off. And then we've got another one here where we're going kind of a little bit gritty. So, you know, there's different ways that we might process these depending on kind of how we like it. Which one do you guys like best? I'd be kind of curious to know. Let me know there in the comments. What do you guys think? Do you like the grungy or do you like the just the bright lights? So we'll call that one number 1, that one number 2. So Ralph, good to see you there, Ralph Nelson. Good buddy of mine. He likes Rock number 2. He likes the grungy. And what you might also do on here, which is something I might do, is maybe apply to, open this in Photoshop. Then I might go back. I'll show you something here. And then let's open this again, back in Camera Raw. This time I'm going to go into the preset and I'm going to apply Rock 1. Open. And then what we could do is we could actually take these, combine them. So we're going to take that one over the other one. So I'm holding down the key, hold down the Shift key and then drop it. So we put that on top. So now we've got both of these on 2 different layers. So the other way you might do it is like that and say, you know what, I like the grungy detail on the guitar player, but I like those lights kind of being a little bit more lit, you know, kind of more futuristic looking. So let's turn on the mask. We're going to grab a black brush. Let me grab my Wacom pen here. And then what we can do is we can combine the two together. So I'm just going to do this quickly just to show you what it would look like. In the real world, I would go in here and I would, you know, take my time, but I just want to show you. So I'm just using black right now, and I'm just painting with black. And we're just painting him. So we're showing that detail here. Nice flying V there. And of course we got the leather pants. Gotta have the leather pants. And let's go here. Hide this other panel just so we can see better. There we go. And I'm just going to make that small. So now I've got our subject popping. And we've got our nice lighting on the background. And then we've got our subject here. And I might even give it a little bit more. So there we go. That's that. So if we look at it before and after, that's combining the two adjustments. And I might, there's a couple, there's more things I could do with this. Let me make Command Shift. What I'm doing here is I'm holding down all the keys, Command Shift Option E, and I'm putting a flattened layer on top. And I'm going to give you a couple of, so I can show you a couple more things you might do. One of the things you might do is high pass sharpening. So we've copied everything on the top, Command Shift Control Option Shift E for everything. So that gives us a flattened layer on top. And now if we go into Overlay Blending Mode, and then we go up under Filter, do Other. And by the way, last Sunday I did one on sharpening, and it shows the regular one and the high pass sharpening. We could go in here, and now we could do our high pass sharpening here. Look at this. So we just want to sharpen that, just get a little bit more gritty. I could even go really strong on this one if I wanted that kind of a look. And we can see that's with the high pass sharpening. See that? It's really making our subject pop. Another way we might do this is actually take another layer on top, change this to overlay mode, go to filter, we're going to choose blur, and add a Gaussian blur. And now we're going to go for a little bit of a interesting effect here with this. Let's try this. You'll see it'll just hit when this starts to hit. You'll notice it's too much, not enough. You can just kind of see how it just creates this, like an Orton effect. That's too much right there. So this is our sweet spot in here. So you can play around in there and our sweet spot. And I want to copy that layer mask because I only want that to affect the lights behind them. So that mask I need to copy there. So all I'm going to do is Option click and drag that mask up. It's going to duplicate that mask onto that layer there. And you can see what that's doing if I turn that off. See how we've got that Orton effect there? And now it's just affecting the lights in the background. See how it's just softening those lights even more, adding some saturation, and we can blend them in. So that's one thing we could do there. So Pat, essentially, she's saying, what about separating the man from background and editing them separately? This is essentially what I've done with the mask. And to be honest, like when I'm doing this in the real world, I would select and cut them out to do it. But right now, I'm just painting in the mask to show you guys the effect. Because if you look at it here, we can see. Let's go there. Essentially, that's what we're doing. See, we're essentially just doing that with the mask, which is just a quicker way of doing it rather than cutting them out. Now, in the real world, if I was doing this for a client, for a project, I would get in there and I would do it granular. But I just want to show you guys how it works without spending, the next 20 minutes cutting out a picture. All right, guys. So what do you guys think? Is that something that's kind of fun? There's a lot of different things we can do with these things. We can add flares. We can do our own stuff. Let me just add a flare to see how this looks. If I'm creating a new layer, we're going to grab a brush. And let's go down here. Although I haven't really done much of that with clients, to be honest. I don't really do much when it comes to the flares and different things like that. Generally, we just keep it pretty real. Let's see, what do we got here? Here we are. Got some brushes. And I was looking for a flare brush just to kind of show you. There we go. And I'm just going to close this down. So this is one of the things you could do if you wanted. If you wanted to start just kind of playing around with special effects, is adding something like a flare, but not in black. Let's do it in white. Boom, and see how you can start to just kind of using brushes. You can add these kind of effects yourself too if you wanted to get more of that. Or maybe make a really small one so it looks like a glint on his guitar. Boom, so it's just kind of hitting some different areas there. There's things like that you can do. More light kind of coming out of there. So there's those kind of effects. If you wanted to apply those, they work as well. I'm just using brushes. So anyway, lovely shot there, Gary. Thanks for sharing that. So anyway, guys, let's have a look here. And so I'm curious if you now turned it to black and white. Well, let's have a look. So just say, guys, as far as the educational part, the Photoshop part, we are done with the lessons. We're going to hang out. I'm going to answer some questions and play around a little bit. So, you know, let's see how this looks in black and white. Personally, I like the colors in this. I think they're really strong. But black and white could look really good as well. Let me just go in here, pop open these layers. Let's go here, black and white. Yeah, it looks quite nice too. Now, one of the things I'll do when I do a black and white like this is I definitely give it more contrast. So let's go into here and we're going to go to curves because we want deep blacks in here. So you're going to do that black and white. You want those strong blacks for rock and roll. So this is the stuff I do for David Lee Roth. When I do the black and whites, he likes them like this, where I do the strong blacks and just kind of let them pop like this. High contrast. Because it's just kind of dynamic.